This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayigash. Now we are Be'ezus Hashem holding at the second shir of Parshas Vayigash, Perek Memhei, Pasuk Dalet. So Yosef just revealed himself to his brothers. He uttered two words that changed the course of history. Ani Yosef. In fact, those words were so intense in the ears of his brothers that the pasuk says they had no reaction. Rashi says they were embarrassed, they were scared, they were completely overwhelmed and taken aback. Now, just to put ourselves in the shoes of the Shvatim for a second, they were embarrassed because they had been negotiating with who they thought was some mashber in Mitzrayim, and it turns out it's their little brother. They were scared because this might be payback time, right? They weren't that kind to their brother. They hated him. They were jealous of him. Ultimately, they sold him, almost killed him. Yosef now is in this position of power, and you would think that this is going to be his moment to take a little bit of retribution, stating that what's going to happen in the next several psukim can only be described in one word, and that is sheer godless, says the pasuk. Vayomer Yosef el Echav. Yosef turns to his brothers, and again, his brothers are just standing there with their jaws dropped. They have nothing to even say. It says, Kshu na elai. Come a little bit closer to me. Vayigashu. And they came a little bit closer. And Yosef said again, Ani Yosef achichem. Maybe you didn't understand 100%. I am your brother Yosef. Hashem b'charta moisi Mitzrayim. Yeah, that Yosef. I'm that Yosef that you sold to Mitzrayim. V'ata, however, now, al teyatzfu. Don't be sad, don't be depressed. V'al yichar be'einechem ki mecharta moisi heino. And don't even feel bad about what happened. Ki lemichya shlachani alakim lefnechem. Because hindsight's 2020. It turns out that the reason that I was sold into Mitzrayim was literally to save our lives. Kizesh nosayim harav b'kerev haaretz. Because as you know, there's been a hunger in the land for the last 2 years. What you might not know is that this hunger is going to persist for another 5 years. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me before you to this land to be able to carve out a little bit of property so that you and the family can come live here with me, and like this you're going to be spared, you're going to be saved. And now you have to realize you are not the reason that I ended up here. Kiho Elokim. This was all orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, Vayisameini la'av l'parei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me an av to Paroi. So literally an av means afuter, a father. Rashi says l'chaver. I became some sort of equal to Paroi. Ula'adin l'chal beisai. I am the butler. I'm in charge of everything that goes on in his palace. U'moishel l'chal eretz Mitzrayim. And not just that, I am the ruler of the entire land. Now, Maharu, I want you to move quickly. Va'alu al avi, go up to my father. Va'amarte me'elav, and you should tell him, Koi Omar bincha Yosef. This is what your son Yosef has to say. So mani elikim la'adin l'chal Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed me as an adon, as a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. Rida Elai al Tamoid. I want you to come down to me and do not wait a minute. Meaning, I think you need to come, and you need to come quickly. So we're going to hit the pause button for 1 second. So Yosef HaTzadik reveals himself to his brothers, and they didn't say one word. Clearly, they were embarrassed. Clearly, they were afraid. But Yosef immediately appeased them. He told them, don't feel bad. Because me coming here and you selling me ultimately is what's going to save us. As a matter of fact, it's not even you. It's not even you. You were a pawn in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This all was orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you're not sure? Look at what happened to me since I got here. Does this sound to you like it's happening al pi derech hateva? Obviously it's not. So this is all being orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for me to be in a position of power, to be able to bring you, my family, here in Mitzrayim, so that you'll have a she'iris ba'aretz, you'll have a fleita gedolah like this. You're going to be able to survive. Now, the last thing that we just read that Yosef told the brothers was, Maharu, go quickly, va'alu alavi, and bring my father. Why all of a sudden do they have to go quickly? It's Pashat. Because really, ala rishonim manu mitztarim, why was Yosef not megala himself to his father right from the onset? The minute he had any position of power, the minute he was able to get on a horse, get on a chamar, and travel the 6-day trek to Hebron and tell his father that he's alive and put him out of his misery, literally, he should have done so. Narvas, the Ramban that we spoke at so many times, said it was all done with cheshbainis. What were the cheshbainis? The dreams. What was governing Yosef was the nevuah that he believed he was being told via his chaloimos. It was the chaloim adaber boy that was calling all the shots. And he understood that before he met his father, his 11 brothers were supposed to come to him and they were supposed to bow down to him. So he needed that dream to play itself out first. Then, because of his whole strategy with the Gavia, he had to make sure it was safe to be able to send the brothers back home together with Binyamin, so that now Yaakov would be able to come. He was able to ascertain that. That's what happened at the very beginning of the parasha. But now that all that took place, and now that he revealed himself to his brothers, okay, now Yaakov's supposed to come. Well, why are we wasting time? The Tata's in so much pain, right? It's a fascinating thing. He's been in pain for 22 years, but there was nothing to do about it. Now that all of a sudden we can act, we have to act this second. So Yosef goes from not saying one word to his father to Maharu, but it's with Cheshbon. If you don't understand the Cheshbon, it makes no sense. But if it's with a cheshbon, then it's with a cheshbon. And that's what he says. Maharu, I want you to go quickly, v'amarte meilov, and you should tell him that it's the following message. Now, we stopped the middle of the message. Let's pick up the message again. Koyamar bincha Yosef. This is what the telegram is going to say. Quote, Somani elikim la'adain l'chol Mitzrayim, ruda elai al tamoid. By the way, the Cheskuni says that in Parshas Miketz, when Yaakov told the brothers, Redu, right, go down to Mitzrayim, so Chazal say the word Redu is Begematria 210, and this is a reference to the 210 years that the Yidden would be in Mitzrayim. Here it says Rida. Rida is Begematria 209. And the reason is because 1 year-ish had already passed since the beginning of this episode. So at this point, when Yaakov is going to come, Yaakov is not going to be Redu anymore. It's going to be Redu -1. It's going to be Rida. And that's this diktuk, Rida Elai Al Tamid. But this is all part of the telegram. The Yoshavte Beretz Goshen. Again, Yosef talking. You, Yaakov, should live in the land of Goshen. And you're going to be living close to me. Not too close, but close. Ata uvanecha, uvnei vanecha, v'tzoincha, ubekarcha, v'chol asher lach. Everything. All your farmei. V'chelkalti oischasham. And I'm going to give you food there. I'm going to be mafarnes you there. Ki oid chamesh shanim rav. Because there's going to be another 5 years of hunger. And if you don't do this, pen tivarish, ata uveischa v'chol asher lach. Rashi says tivarish is miloshen anios. That you may become poor, you're going to lose everything. This is the message that Yosef tells the brothers they should deliver to Yaakov. It starts in Pasuk Tes, it goes through Pasuk Yud Aleph. Then Yosef continued talking to the brothers. He says, V'hine, einechem ra'os, your eyes see, ve'enei achi Binyamin, as do the eyes of my brother Binyamin, ki piha medaber aleichem, that my mouth is the mouth that is speaking to you. Now if you look at Rashi and the Ramban and all the Rishonim, they all struggle. What does this pasuk even mean? It looks a little out of place. Like, what is the point of this pasuk? But the way Rashi learns is that Yosef was giving his brothers like additional proof that he's really Yosef. And the additional proof was, ki piha medaber aleichem. I'm speaking Lashon HaKodesh. You see, we speak the same language. I'm a landsman. I'm really your brother Yosef. Now, why does Yosef feel that he has to interrupt the program to again be mechazik and say that he's Yosef? Because they haven't said one word yet. You realize they're standing there speechless? Their jaws are just dropping lower and lower and lower. That's what's going on over here. They're just like in total shock. Either way, Yosef continues. He says, I want you to relate over to my father all the covet that I had in Mitzrayim. Everything that you saw. Do this quickly. Bring my father over here. And the pasuk says, Yosef fell on the necks. Chazal say, how many necks did Binyamin have? But he fell on the necks of Binyamin and he cried. Binyamin bachal tzavarav, and Binyamin cried on the necks of Yosef as well. And then Yosef went and he kissed his other brothers. So notice favoritism. First Binyamin and then his other brothers. He cried on them as well. And how many psukim later? 12 psukim later, the brothers were able to talk. They were quiet for 12, so they didn't say one word. Vayigash of Yehuda, nope, nothing, not a word. Ruvain Shimon, nothing. Levi saying alumdus, Yisachar saying a shtickle Torah, not one word. Zvulin's negotiating a deal, no, not one word. Nobody was able to say a word. Not one word until here. Finally, dibru echavitay. Now, what was the va'achrechein? What was the finally? So Rashi says, me'acha shera'uhu boicha v'libay shalom imahem dibru echavitay shemetchila hayabayshim imenu. When he saw Yosef cry, that's when he came around. It's interesting. All the talk, even that, didn't move the brothers enough to get to the point where they were comfortable. But when he cried, tears come from the depths of a person's soul. When they saw Yosef crying the way he cried, they realized Yosef was serious. They realized Yosef has no tainus. Yosef is not going to come after them. When Yosef said, he meant it. That's what they came to realize when it was Vayef Galeim. This was very, very sincere. And if that's the case, we have nothing to be afraid of. We have nothing to be embarrassed of. And it was then that they began to talk to them. The pasuk continues. Word got out in the house of Paroi, Bo Ache Yosef, that the brothers of Yosef arrived. And when Paroi heard that, and when Paroi's Avodav heard that, they were very, very pleased. The Ramban says something very nice. The Ramban says, number one, Bo Ache Yosef. It sounds like Beis Paroi knew about Ache Yosef. The Ramban says they did. Yosef had told Paroi, he told his close people that he came from the land of the Ivrim. Right? You remember he said, Ki gunav gunavti. He says, I was stolen, I was kidnapped. And he said he had a whole family of brothers. So they knew about the brothers. They never met them, right? When are we going to meet the mishpocha, the arim, all the cousins? He had never met them, but they knew about them. So Bo Ache Yosef, those brothers that we had heard about, those brothers arrived. And Vayita be'inei Paroi be'inei Avodav. And when Paroi and his ministers met the Ache Yosef, they were very pleased. And here the Ramban says something very nice also. And the reason is because, let's be honest, at the end of the day, this whole idea that Yosef, who's an Ivri, who's a despised Ivri, can't break bread with him. That's how despised he is. He's running this country. They were very disappointed. Who knows who this kid is? He might come from a family of slaves. We don't know from Vanim stammt, right? How do I know what his yichus is? How many doiris is he to which Rebbe? I have no idea. And as a result, the fact that he's running this country, right, a Polish and English, who are we even dealing with? They were not so happy over the fact that this person who has an unknown yichus brief on his birth certificate, he's the person that's running the country. All of a sudden, when they saw his family, all his brothers walk in, each person comes in looking better than the next. They're sharp, they're smart, they're intelligent, they're dressed to the nines. They were so happy. Vayita be'inei Paroi be'inei Avodav. You see, I knew my judgment's good, Paroi said. I knew I picked a good one. And it's not just, wow, Bo Ache Yosef, I'm so happy for Yosef. No, they were actually happy for themselves. It was good for the whole land of Egypt, that this is the person, this is the Mishnah Lamelech. Either way. Now Paroi chimes in, and Paroi turns to Yosef. And he says, tell your brothers, this is what I want them to do. Tanu as be'irchem. I want them to load up their donkeys, right? Fill up the trunk of the car. Uluchu bo arza Canaan. And I want them to now go towards Canaan, right? They should bring your father, and they should bring all his possessions, and bring it back to me. And I'm going to give them the best of the land of Mitzrayim, and they're literally going to eat off the fat of the land. So Yosef had just told his brothers, go bring Yaakov. Yosef has a lot of authority in the land, but as much authority as he has, he still answers to one person. He still answers to Paroi. So now Paroi comes in, and Paroi is going to sign off on Yosef, but he's not only signing off on it, he's actually doubling down a little bit. In fact, let's look at the next pasuk. Va'ata, tzuvesa zoisasu. And the way the Rishonim explain this pasuk, Paroi tells Yosef, I'm commanding you to go ahead and say the follows. I want you to take from the land of Mitzrayim wagons. What do you need wagons for? L'tapchem, because you're going to be bringing the whole family, for the children, for your wives, unasasem es avichem uvasem, and you should use it to carry your father and the ganze familia, and you should bring them over here. Ve'enchem al toches al kolechem, and don't start getting busy schlepping all the pachim ketanim, right? This is Yaakov l'shitasai. Niva v'layada maniva. You don't have to take all these different kalim. Ki tuv kol eretz Mitzrayim l'chema, because whatever you need, you're going to get furnished apartments. Everything that you will ever need, you're going to have over here. Yasu came b'nei Yisroel. So the b'nei Yisroel, as in the sons of Yisroel, the sons of Yaakov, they followed through. Vayiten lahem Yosef agolois al pi Paroi. And Yosef gave them agalois per the instructions of Paroi. Vayiten lohem tzedel l'darech, and in addition to that, he also gave them some tzedel l'darech. Right? You need a little bit of food for the road. Not just that, he gave all of his brothers a change of clothing. Binyamin, favoritism. He gets 300 shekels just for some petty cash. And he doesn't just get a change of clothing, he gets 5 changes of clothing. Maybe it's a 6-day trip, so he gets to change clothing every day. I don't know. And this is what he sent to his father. He sent them 10 chamorim, noisem mituv Mitzrayim, and it was carrying on it. It was laden with the best that Egypt had to offer. The eser asoinois, and then 10. What's the difference between a chamor and an asoin? So the chamor is the male, the asoin is the female. So there were 10 asoinois, noisois. Lashon nekeva, bar, tfua, valechem, and bread, umazayin, and food, la'aviv, ladarech, for the father, ladarech, so they should have it now on the road. Vayishalaches echa vayelechu. Then he sent his brothers out, and they went. Vayomer aleim, and he told them the infamous words, al tirgizu badarech. So what does al tirgizu badarech mean? So now, but Rashi brings a whole bunch of different pshatim in the name of Chazal. What al tirgizu badarech means. But then Rashi says, ulufu pshutay shal mikra. You want to know what the pashup pshat is? Yosef was worried that the brothers would start killing each other on the way home. It's your fault. It was your fault. How did you not chap? How did you not realize? I mean, can you imagine what the conversation is going to be the minute they're on the road and Yosef is not overhearing what's going on over there? So he says, Ich beitach, this is the only condition I have. Al tirgazu badarech. Don't be misfakeach zem zeh. Don't start speaking lashon hara. Don't get involved in all this inyan. Everything is fine. Everything is okay. I'm telling you, it's not necessary. Al tirgazu badarech, godless of Yosef. So the pasuk says that Yosef revealed himself. He told the brothers, go quickly, call my father. What needs to happen in order for the family to survive is they have to relocate, temporarily, but have to relocate here in Mitzrayim, because it's the only place there's going to be food. I even parceled out an area. It's called Goshen. We'll see more about Goshen towards the end of the parsha. But I parceled out an area, and that's the place that you should be living. In the interim, here's Seidel Derech. Binyamin, come here. It's $300. Change of clothing. Paroi comes, and Paroi says, come on, this is what you send your father. You have to send him off. Much more chushev, agulois. And he starts sending him chamoirim and asoinis, noisem mitiv Mitzrayim, bar, lechem, muzen, everything. He sends him with a full smorgasbord, everything. He says, come on, this is your father. It's interesting, the Ramban says that why did Paroi have to be like so stark with Yosef? Right, when Paroi told Yosef to do this, what did he tell him? Vayomer Paroi al Yosef, emoira lachecha zoisasu. Okay, that's like a little bit stark. The next one. Va'ata tzuvesa zoisasu. The Ramban says, because Paroi knew Yosef, and he knew that Yosef was so erlich with the treasury. He was a nickel and dimer. He was so precise. He was never going to take agolos. He was never going to take these things out of the treasury and send them to his father. But Paroi wanted him to do it, and Paroi said, Zoisasu, this is important. Also, if you could appreciate this a little bit more, we're in the middle of a hunger, right? So no one's going to be super great right now. We're rationing food, right? Think about it. This is one big soup kitchen right now, the entire land of Egypt. But afilu hachi, he told him, Va'ata tzuvesa zoisasu, I want you to do this with a ravches. Come on. You're going to see your father now for the first time in 22 years. You have to be mechaber him properly. This is the way you have to go about it. Either way, so the pasuk says Yosef sends them off. Vayalu mi Mitzrayim. They ascended from Mitzrayim. Vayalu because they're traveling north. Also Vayalu because Eretz Yisroel is gavoya mikol ha'aratzos. So they're going up from Mitzrayim back to the land of Canaan. Vayavoyu Eretz Canaan. They came to the land of Canaan. Yaakov Avim to their father Yaakov. Vayagidu loy leimar. Vayagidu loy leimar. They told Yaakov. You know what they told him? Oid Yosef chai. V'chi hu moishel b'chol Eretz Mitzrayim. So what was Yaakov's reaction? We know what the brother's reaction was. The brother's reaction was nothing. Shasik Rav. But now Yaakov just heard the same words. So the pasuk says, "Vayafag libai." That was his reaction. Because he didn't believe them. Now, the machlokes Rashi and the Ramban, what Vayafag libai means. Rashi says Vayafag libai means nechlach libai v'holach milahamin. Vayafag libai and ki lo hamin lahem means the same thing. Yaakov did not believe them. Says, "Come on, it's not true. I don't believe you. I don't believe you." The Ramban says, no, Vayafag libai doesn't mean, like literally, he didn't believe them. Okay, so then what does Vayafag libai mean? So the Ramban says that Vayafag libai means he had a heart attack of some sort. I'll read his lashon, and the doctors could decide what exactly this means. V'gam ze Vayafag libai, shenisbata libai, upaska nishimasai, ki paska tnuas halev v'hoya kemes. V'zeh ha'inyin yodua b'vaya simcha pisraim. V'huskar b'sifrei ha'refuos, ki lo yizbelu zeh askena v'chalusha yakoyach. She'yis'alfu rabbi mehem b'voy lehem simcha b'pesa pisraim. Ki yeh halev nircha v'niftach pisraim, v'achoy ma'toylodi yoytzei u'mispaze b'chitzoynei aguf, v'ye'ofeis halev b'hiskareroi. So again, you have to know how to read this medical report. But the bottom line is, it's something along the lines of he passed out, his heart skipped a beat, he went into cardiac arrest, something along these lines. He for sure passed out, he was for sure nechshav kemes, had something to do with his heart, right? But Vayafag libai, he passed out, he couldn't even believe what he was listening to. But then they told him everything that Yosef said. And then he saw the agolos, he saw the wagons. That Yosef had sent to bring him. And when he saw the agolos, all of a sudden he got his life back. All of a sudden we feel a pulse. He's going to make it the patient. All of a sudden, everything was okay. Everyone knows the Chazal. Vayaris Agolos. What were the Agolos all about? So Chazal say that when Yaakov Avinu had escorted Yosef HaTzadik all the way back in Parshas Vayeshev, when did he escort him? He escorted him to Shechem. It was the last time he saw him. Right? Yaakov had told Yosef that, you know, the brothers are royim b'Shechem. L'cha ve'eshlachacha aleihem. Right? Can I send you out there? And he sent them out towards Shechem. And the Medrash says on that pasuk, that Yaakov Avinu did what every person's supposed to do when you send somebody. You baglite him. You walk with him a little bit. So Yaakov told his son Yosef back in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, let me walk with you a little bit. And they're walking together, and he's sending him towards Shechem. And what do you think Yaakov and Yosef were doing when they were walking together? They were talking and learning. And you know what sugya they were learning? They were learning the sugya of Egla Rufa. The last time Yaakov saw Yosef was when he sent him to Shechem. The last conversation Yaakov had with Yosef wasn't learning. Which sugya? It was the sugya of Egla Rufa. Yosef HaTzadik, when he comes and he reveals himself to his father 22 years later, and he tells the brothers, I want, the tata to realize all the cover that I got, everything, I'm fine, I'm okay. This was all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was all orchestrated. We could all breathe now. Everything is fine. But he also wanted him to know that he was spiritually okay. And his way of sending the message that he was spiritually okay, I still am holding in the last sugya that we were learning together. I remember the kasha. It It was Koshalai Predaschem. It was 22 years of separation. But at the same time, I remember the sugya that we were learning. We were learning the sugya of Egla Arufa. And that was all symbolized in the Agalos. Of course, Pare said, send the Agalos. It's there. Tapchem. You understand the Pashup Shah. But Vayares Agalos. When Yaakov saw the Agalos and he realized, wow, he's still holding in the sugya 22 years later. That means he was able to overcome all the nisyonis that Mitzrayim would bring with it. The Vayemoyin dig in nisyonis. When he saw that, that's what brought him back to life. That's what gave him back his chiyas. In fact, Rashi says, it wasn't just that his heart started beating again, but his Ruach HaKodesh came back. His Simcha came back. He became a Merkava again. This all returned to him when he saw the Agalos. Vayom Yisroel. And then Yaakov Avinu said, Rav, Oid Yosef b'ni Chai, El Chaverenu b'terem Amos. Rashi says what the word Rav means. But if you take a look at the Rashbam, and if you take a look at Ibn Ezra, they both say something beautiful. They say the brothers come to Yosef, to Yaakov, and they tell Yaakov, he says, you know, and now they have to deliver the message, right? What's the message? The message is that Yosef is a Odoin, he's a Moshel, he's an Av, right? It's a whole elaborate message that they have to read off the teleprompter. They have this whole telegram that they're supposed to communicate. When Yaakov heard all this, he said, Rav, you think I care about that? Think I care that he's king? It would make no difference to me if he's king or if he's an slave somewhere. What I care about is that my son is alive. And you know what I want? I just want to go and see him. I don't care about seeing all his covered. I don't even care about being poor or rich. That's not what I care about right now. I just want to go. I'm already old, but Terem Amos, I don't know how much time I have left on this world. Chevra, we got to go this second. So the pasuk says immediately that Yaakov Avinu, Yisroel, and he started traveling, him and everything that he had. And he went to Beersheva. And when it came to Beersheva, he brought Zvachim, as in, right? Meseches Zvachim, the Mesechta that we're learning right now. To the God of his father, Yitzchak. And it's amazing how, again, the story of the Avos makes a stop where? In the city of Beersheva. Something we spoke about when we were in Eretz Yisrael. But again, it stops off in Beersheva. It's fascinating. Beersheva is one of the focal points of the story of the Avos. Beersheva was a place that Yaakov Avinu had learned in the yeshiva for 14 years. According to the Marshal we spoke about in the beginning of Parshas Vayetze. Beersheva was a place that Yitzchak Avinu had lived for a good part of his life, where Avram Avinu had lived for a good part of his life. Presumably that's what Yaakov had grown up. That was a place that they had built mizbechas in the past, a place that they had brought karbanos, and en route from Hebron, Canaan, back down to Mitzrayim, Yaakov Avinu stops off in Beersheva and he brings karbanos. And the pasuk says, that night he stayed over in Beersheva and he had a dream. Vayomer Elokim liYisrael b'maros halayla. Middle of the night. Vayomer Yaakov, Vayomer Hineni. Vayomer, Kadosh Baruch Hu turns to Yaakov and he tells him the following. And I think if you think about this pasuk, if you meditated on it for a minute, it's a fascinating pasuk. Fascinating pasuk, tucked away. Vayomer, Onoichi Okel, Elokei Avicha. I am the God of your father. Al tira merdam Mitzrayim. Do not be afraid to descend to Mitzrayim. Ki legoy gadol asimcha sham. Because over there in Mitzrayim, you are going to become a great nation. This pasuk is foreboding for what's going to happen. The very, very, very end of Parshas Vayechi, and really, we know it much more from the beginning of Sefer Shemos. You know, up until now, the Avos had been promised so many different times that they would become a goy gadol, they would get tremendous haftachas. But all those haftachas were contingent upon the land of Canaan. Every single time Hashem promises the Avos something, it's always in Eretz Canaan, it's in Eretz Canaan, it's in Eretz Canaan. Right, the Escha Sham l'goy gadol. Where's Sham? Sham is the land of Canaan. That's where all the haftachas are supposed to happen. That's the Bris Bein Absarim, etc. Over here, Yaakov Avinu was told, go to Mitzrayim, ki l'goy gadol asimcha Sham. There's a special bracha you're going to get over there in Mitzrayim. And that's what happened. We know that's what happened. That's the story. We become a nation where? We don't become a nation in Canaan. When we become a nation, we go to Canaan. We become a nation in Mitzrayim. So this is very, very prophetic. And this is really where Sefer Shemos starts connecting. the Sefer Bereshis, where it's Ki l'goy gadol ha-simcha sham, which is very much going to be the segue for what's going to happen in the beginning of Shemos. But either way, Yaakov Avinu was afraid to go to Mitzrayim. Right? He knows all his brachas. Everything is associated with the land of Canaan. Comes again the Eibishter, he says, I know you don't want to leave Eretz Canaan. Why? Because everything you've ever been promised, you, your father, Yezeda, has been associated with this country. Al tira merda Mitzrayim. You have nothing to fear. Fakert. Ki l'goy gadol ha-simcha sham. That's really where you're going to become a goy gadol. Anoichi eirei dimcha Mitzrayim. And then the Eibishter told him. He says, I'm going to descend down with you to Mitzrayim. V'anoichi a'alcha gamal. And I'm going to come up. I'm going to ascend at some point back from Mitzrayim with you. Meaning, this is not a place that you are going to be forever. V'yosef yashis yadei aleinecha. And in the interim, Yosef is going to take care of you. Vayokom Yaakov Beersheva. Yaakov picked himself up in Beersheva. Vayisub b'nei Yisroel as Yaakov avihem. And the whole family, they went on the Agolos, that Pari had sent to take them from Canaan to Mitzrayim. And they took their cattle, and all their possessions. And they came to Mitzrayim. Yaakov and his family, Banov, his sons, Uvnei Banov, and his grandsons Itai, Benois of his daughters, Ubenois Banov, and his sons' daughters, V'chol Zari, and all the offspring, Hevi Itai Mitzrayim, he brought together with him until Mitzrayim. And now the pasuk is going to go, and the pasuk is going to delineate these next several psukim, right? So when you're in shul, this is when the Balkair is supposed to, put a little gas, and we're going to go through now the names of all the descendants, the entire family of Yaakov that actually descended to Mitzrayim. Zok the pasuk. Ve'elu shmois b'nei Yisrael haba Mitzrayim Yaakov uvanav. So these are the names. Ve'elu shmois, not to be confused with ve'elu shmois that we're going to learn very, very soon in the beginning of Parshas Shmois. But ve'elu shmois b'nei Yisrael haba Mitzrayim Yaakov uvanav. It was Yaakov and his sons. Bechor Yaakov. The Bechor of Yaakov was Reuven. Bnei Reuven, the sons of Reuven were Chanoich, Ufalu, Vechetzrim, Vecharmi. Uvnei Shimon, Yemuel, V'Yamin, V'Oyad, V'Yachim, V'Tzoicha, V'Shol ben HaKnanis. Who's Shol ben HaKnanis? So Shimon has a son whose name is Shaul ben HaKnanis. So it's a big machlokes rishonim. Rashi says Shol ben HaKnanis is Shaul, the son of Dinah. Shimon had married Dinah. Shimon had a child together with Dinah. Why would Dinah be referred to as a Kananis? Shenivala l'Kanani, because she was nivala to a Kanani. If you take a look at the Even Ezra says no. Avada, it's not Dinah, but rather this Kananis is some sort of Kananis. So why does the Kananis get a shout out? He says because the Shvatim had a Messiah from the family that you're only supposed to marry from the mishpacha, or at the very least, do not marry any Knanim. This was a kpeda that Avram had, that Yitzchak had, right, that Yaakov had. So we know this is an old kpeda. Everybody kept to it, with the exception of Shimon. Shimon married a Knanis, had one child from a Knanis, and that's this child Shal. Ubnei Levi, the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kahas, Merari. Ubnei Yehuda, Erva Oinon, V'Shelav of Eretz V'Zarach, Vayamas Erva Oinon of Eretz Canaan, that we know already from Parshas Vayeshev, that Erva Oinon died because of Vayu b'nei Peretz, and the sons of Peretz were Chetzron v'Chamel. So here the pasuk already mentions next generation, that the sons of Peretz were Chetzron and Chamel. Incidentally, Even Ezra says over here that why are we mentioning that Erva Oinon died? Like, why is this important? Right? Really, what's the objective here? We're not going through the whole yichus of the sons of Yaakov. We're talking about all the descendants of Yaakov that actually came to Mitzrayim. So why do you have to mention Erva Oinon? So Even Ezra al Pidarko says that being that we said Shaul was ben HaKnanis, you should know there was another one of the brothers that really did marry Kananis, and who was that? That was Yehuda Bas Shua HaKanani. But you should know that there was a punishment because of that. That's why Erva Oinon ended up dying. Now, why is this a chiddush to Even Ezra? Because remember, Rashi and Chumash says that the Kanani over there meant a merchant. Chalila didn't actually mean a Kanani. But this is Even Ezra who's learning in Pshutei Shel Mikra that there were really not one brother that married a Kananis, Shimon, but it was Yehuda as well. Ubnei Yisachar. What about Yisachar? Toila Ufuva v'Yoy v'Shimrei. Ubnei Zvulun Sered ve'Ela v'Yachlel. Ela b'nei Leah. What we just mentioned now are the sons of Leah. Actually, all the Yaakov Padan Aram. Right. All of these children, the sons, anyways, were born in Padan Aram. The Eis Dina Bita in a addition to that, there was also Dina, right? We're counting the girls. Banav ubnei banav itai, benoisav ubnois banav, kol nefesh banav ubnoisav. And if you do all the math, what does it add up to? Shloishim v'shalish 33. Don't count, because if you count, you're actually only going to get 32. We'll get to that in a second. Ubnei Gad. What about the offsprings of Gad? Tzifyim v'chagi shuni v'etzpain eri v'aroidi v'areili. So God had a nice family. Ubnei Asher. The sons of Asher, Yimna v'yishva v'yishvi ubriya v'serach achoisam. So again, Asher has sons. Yimna v'yishva v'yishvi ubriya. 4 sons. And he has a daughter. Serach is there as in Yimna Yishva Yishvi Ubriya, sister. Asher's daughter. This is the famous Serach Bas Asher. Ubnei Bria. Asher also gets grandchildren. Ubnei Bria Chever Umalkiel. Ela bnei Zilpa. The aforementioned other bnei Zilpa Asher Nasan Lavan Leleah Bitay. That Lavan had given as a shivcha initially, right, to Leah his daughter. Vatela es Ela LeYaakov. And if you do the math, the family tree, how many descendants come from Zilpa? Shnei Chesrei Nafesh. The number is 16. Bnei Rachel Eches Yaakov. Yosef uBinyamin. Right, Rachel had 2 sons, Yosef and Binyamin. Why is only Rachel referred to as Eishes Yaakov? Because she's the ikar of Yaakov's wives. Vayivaled liYosef be'eretz Mitzrayim. Asher yoldoloi Osnas bas Peitifera koyenoin es Menashe v'es Ephraim. So Yosef, through Osnas, who's the daughter of Peitifera koyenoin, we spoke already about Peitifera and Parshas Mikes, gave birth to 2 sons. Who are the 2 sons? Menashe was the oldest. Ephraim number 2. Binyamin. What about Binyamin? So Binyamin we know had 10 sons. Bela v'vecha v'ashbel geru v'naman ichi v'roish mupim v'chupim v'art. Ela b'nei Rachel asher yulad LeYaakov. If you do the math and you tally up all the sons of Rachel, kol nefesh arba asar, it's going to be 14. Moving along to Bilhah. Ubnei Dan Chushim. Why is it Ubnei Dan? It should be Uben Dan, right? But Ubnei Dan, 1 son, Chushim. Ubnei Naftali, Yachzel, Viguni, V'yetze, V'shibin. Elu b'nei Bilhah, Nasan Lavan Rachel Bitay. These are the children of Bilhah that Nasan gave, that Lavan gave to Rachel, his daughter. V'atela es Ela LeYaakov, and she gave birth to children to Yaakov. Kol Nefesh, how many was it in total? Shiva, it was 7. Says the pasuk, Kol nefesh abal Yaakov Mitzrayim yoytze yirechoi milvan neshev bnei Yaakov. If you do the math of all the offspring of Yaakov Avinu that came to Mitzrayim, Kol nefesh shishim v'sheish. The number you're going to have is 66. Meaning 66 are coming from Canaan, descending down to Mitzrayim. Uvnei Yosef asher yuloi b'Mitzrayim nefesh dayim. And then Yosef's family is living in Mitzrayim already, right? So you have Yosef himself and Yosef's 2 sons, Kol HaNefesh L'Beis Yaakov, Haba Mitzrayim. And if you do the math and you add everything together, the number that you're going to end up with is Shivin. The number you're going to end up with is 70. Either way. So Yaakov Avinu goes down to Mitzrayim. The Torah quickly interrupts and tells us how many offspring, how many descendants of Yaakov actually went. And if you do the math is, it's 70. And the Torah breaks down how you come to the number 70, right? Where does the number 70 come? You had 33 Bnei Leah, you had 16 Bnei Zilpah, you had 14 Bnei Rachel, and then there was 7 Bnei Bilhah. So if you take 33 plus 16 plus 14, so 16 and 14 is 30, plus 33 is 63, plus 7 Bnei Bilhah, you're going to end up with 70, and that's the cheshbon of B'shivim Nefesh Yardu Aviseinu L'Mitzrayim, like we say in Agadah Shal Pesach. Everybody knows this. That how many Jews did we start off with? We started off with 70, and then of course when we left it was Ki Yotzei Mitzrayim, right? But the bottom line is this is the humble beginnings of the Jews in Mitzrayim. They begin with 70. So just a few observations as it relates to some of these cheshbonis that we just went through. So again, the Torah went through and delineated first the Bnei Leah, afterwards the Bnei Zilpah, then the Bnei Rachel, and then the Bnei Bilhah. So just a few things, high-level observations. First of all, why do we do it in that order? Why is the order Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, and Bilhah? So we've mentioned this already in the past, that every time the Imois and the Shvatim are mentioned, you have to cheshbon, like, why this order? There's always a method, right? So why would this be the order? So Pasha, it would seem that the order is from highest to lowest. I mean, that's just what it sounds like. If you do the math, the way the numbers play themselves out are 33, 16, 14 and 7. Right? Otherwise, you would think, for sure, the Imais and then the Shifchais, you would think even Rachel should be first. But the bottom line is, it would seem that that's the order. The order is just going from highest to lowest. And it's for that reason it goes Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, and Bilhah. Another observation, who had the most sons from all the Shvatim? Binyamin. Right? Binyamin had 10 sons. Who had the least? That's really easy. Ubnei Dan Chushim, right? So Dan had the least. Not only did Binyamin have the most, there's no one that even had close, right? There was one brother that had 7, but for the most part, 4 or 5 children. Binyamin has 10. Could be pshat is, because the Gemara says in Soita Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis that really Yosef was supposed to have the Shvatim, but it ended up, because of what happened, that Binyamin ends up getting the children that Yosef was supposed to have. So there was a cheshbon of Yosef really being Maimed Yud Beis Shvatim. But he lost that schos, and that's why Binyamin ended up getting his children. That's probably, related somehow to how that works out. Another interesting observation is, there's only 2 girls mentioned. Dina Bas Yaakov and Serach Bas Asher. The Rashbam is not here. The Rashbam is actually in Parshas Vayetze. The Rashbam speaks out that from the fact that the Torah mentioned that I'm going to include the girls, and there's only 2 girls that are mentioned, must be there were only 2 girls in the whole family. This was a very male-dominated mishpacha, but at the end of the day, there's only 2 girls in the equation, and that is Dina, the daughter of Yaakov, and Serach, who's Yaakov's granddaughter, who's the daughter of Asher. One of the kashas that Rashi and the Ramban both struggle with a little bit, what do you do with the Chazal that say that all the Shvatim had Tu'umim? They all had twins that were born together with them. So where did all these twins go? So this is not the first time this kasha jumped off the page, right? What happened to the twins? We have this Messiah, they had twins, but there's so many psukim that are completely making sich nicht wissendig from these twins even existing. So there's really 2 mahalchim in the Rishonim. One mahalch in the Rishonim is, Rashi says that the twins all died. They must have all died. And if they died, they never made it down to Mitzrayim. But the Ramban says, I don't know why you would say that. Fakert, I would say that if Tu'umim were noildu in Shvatim, the Shvatim probably married the Tu'umim. If you look at the Pasuk says very clearly that the number of 70 that went down is milvad. That's besides for the wives of the sons of Yaakov. That means we know already that we're excluding the wives. Kol nefesh habal Yaakov Mitzrayim yoytze Yerechai milvad neshei bnei Yaakov kol nefesh shishim v'shesh. So being that we know we're not counting the wives, so it's for that reason it's pashut, that would be the cheshbon. Here's another interesting question. What about Yaakov's wives? Were any of Yaakov's wives alive? Well, Rachel, we know for sure, is not alive. Leah, I think we mentioned somewhere along the way, could be that Leah passed away. Bilhah, Zilpah, were the Neshei Yaakov alive? So the truth is, it seems to be a machlokes Rashi and the Ramban in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev. And this is really going to segue into the next part of the story. And that is, Yosef had 2 dreams. In his second dream, what did Yosef say? He saw the sun, he saw the moon, and he saw 11 koichavim bowing down to him, which meant that his brothers were going to bow down to him, but he knew that already from the first dream, but also his father and his mother. Freit Rashi, his mother's not alive anymore. Rachel died, Keva Rachel. So what do you mean his mother is going to bow down to him? So Rashi says that Yosef didn't realize that who was the mother that was going to bow down? It was going to be Bilhah. And being that Bilhah helped raise him, so it's for that reason, it's Ki'imai, but the bottom line is referring to Bilhah. The Ramban, on that Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev says, I disagree with this Rashi. Because Rashi seems to be saying that Bilhah was alive when they had this great encounter now in Mitzrayim to bow down to Yosef, and that's not true. And the Ramban says, I know it's not true because Kol nefesh habali Yaakov Mitzrayim yoytze Yerechai milvad neshei bnei Yaakov, and it doesn't say milvad neshei Yaakov. Vaytzis, there were no neshei Yaakov, and at that point Yaakov is showing an almond from all 4 of his wives, and it's for that reason it doesn't say milvad neshei Yaakov. It only says milvad neshei bnei Yaakov. But the bottom line is the Ramban says Bilhah was not alive. So it seems to be a machlokes whether at the very least Bilhah was alive. That seems to be Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, and the Ramban, who's chaylik with Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev. But one last observation, and this is the most obvious one, and that is, so the pasuk says that there are 70, right? You do the math, and what you're going to see is, you're going to see 70 offspring of Yaakov Avinu that are entering Mitzrayim. You know what the problem is? The problem is if you actually count and you actually do the math, the number is not 70. The number is really 69. And where there's one off is by the Bnei Leah. The Bnei Leah, we cheshbon 33. It's really not 33. The number is really 32. And Chazal asks this kasha. It's the Gemara in Bava Basra. Rashi quotes it right here in Parshas Vayigash. And Rashi says that the answer to that missing person is Yocheved. Zu Yocheved shenolda bein hachoymos. She was born literally bein hachoymos. So if you want to counter, you could sort of counter. If you don't want to counter, you could also get away without counting her. And she's this in-between person. And it's referring to Yocheved shenolda. It's referring to Yocheved shenolda bein hachoymos. The Rishonim, take a look at Even Ezra, has a very, very long arichos on this chazal. Even Ezra says that if Yocheved was nolda bein hachoymos, we know Yocheved as Moshe Rabbeinu's mother, it would make Yocheved extremely old when she gave birth to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Even Ezra says, we know the Torah makes such a big deal about Sarah, who was already older when she had a child, Yitzchak. The Torah doesn't say one word about a miracle taking place, Yocheved giving birth to Moshe. And it's because of that Even Ezra challenges this chazal. The Ramban tells Even Ezra, you have a kash on a chazal, so you're challenging it. This is a famous vikuach between the Ramban and Even Ezra in the world of Pshutei Shel Mikra that plays itself out right here in Parshas Vayigash. It's way beyond the scope of what we're doing today. For another day, for sure, but not for today. But the bottom line is that Even Ezra says that because of this, I'm trying to find a more pashut pshat in terms of understanding this discrepancy between the number 69 and the number 70. So he says, I'm going to tell you a pshat that I saw. Now, he doesn't put a name to the face, but this is the Rush. The Rush says this in Arbi Psachim, and this is something that we've spoken about many times over the years in the raid, and that is, you want to know how many Yidden there were? There were 69 Yidden. It was 69. So why does it say 70? Because sometimes the Torah rounds off numbers. And the Rush says, I'll prove to you that the Torah rounds off numbers. Because when you count Sfiras HaOmer, how many days do you count? 49. What does it say in the Torah? Tisperu Chamishim Yoim. When you give Malchus, how many Malchus do you give? 39. What does it say in the Torah? Arbaim Yakenu. The Torah says the Torah rounds off numbers. Says Even Ezra, the aside of the Torah rounding off numbers, I can live with. You think Even Ezra could live with that aside? I think Even Ezra could have written that aside. Even Ezra has no problem saying such a aside. If you know, right? Even Ezra says, I have no problem with it. He says, but I'm going to tell you my problem. And he asks such a good kasha, it's almost a kasha she'ein olav tshuva. He says, when the Torah talks about the numbers, the Torah didn't just give us the gross number, 70, oh, it's really 69. The Torah broke it up. And when the Torah mentioned the Bnei Leah, the Torah said, you know how many Bnei Leah there were? 33 Bnei Leah. It's not 33, it's 32. So says Even Ezra, you want to round off 69 to 70, that's an even number. I can live with that. But how do you round off 32 to 33? What's the difference between those two numbers? That makes no sense. So Even Ezra says, I can live with rounding off numbers, but I can't live with it in this sugya. It's not going to answer the kasha, because you can answer off how you rounded off 69 to 70. But 33 is, log. Yeah, 33 is a fire number, but you don't round off 32 to 33, right? You get that wrong on your test if you try that. So how do you go from 32 to 33? That's where I see something. So what's the pshat? So it says Even Ezra, and if you look at the Rashbam, in his world of Pshutei Shel Mikra, he went with the identical mahalach as well, and that is that the cheshbon of 70 includes Yaakov. If you count the 69, it's 69 offspring of Yaakov. It's 69 milvad Yaakov. The 70 already includes Yaakov. That's how we get to the number 70. Either way, this is a fascinating little equation that really we can have a little bit more fun with. Hafachba v'afachba. But I think it's kedai to read 3 more psukim. I know we're up to Shishi. We're already holding by the Rebbe's Aliyah, but at the same time, I think it's kedai to read 3 more psukim. Ves Yehuda shalach lefanav el Yosef. So Yaakov is traveling with the whole family. It's going to take a little bit of time, right? Remember when Yaakov was leaving Lavan? Now the kids were much younger then, but now there's Einiklach. So it takes time to travel with such a caravan. So Yaakov sends Yehuda ahead. He sends him as part of the advance team. So that's Yehuda Shalach Lefanav al Yosef. He sends him to Yosef. Lahoiris Lefanav Goshna. And Pasha, what he wanted is that Yosef should tell Yehuda where Goshen is. It's like this. Everything is going to be in order. Vayavayu Artz of Goshen, and they arrived in Goshen. Everyone knows. Rashi says that what does it mean? Lahoiris Lefanav. It's a little bit of a funny word. The word Lahoiris is a lashon of Torah. Lasakin lebeis Talmud. Shem Nisham Teitzei Hayra. That he didn't just want him to go tell him where's Goshen. It's like I punch it into my ways. No, he wants to prepare the land of Goshen spiritually. So when we show up, we'll already have what to daven, we're going to already have what to learn. But yes, Yosef Merkavta, either way, so Yehuda comes in advance and he tells Yosef, it's happening. It's coming right now. Your father is on his way. So Yosef immediately goes and he fires up his chariot. And he started going towards his father, Goshna, to the city of Goshen. That's where he's going to meet him. Vayera Elav. Yosef appeared in front of his father. Vayipay al tzavarav. He fell on his neck. Vayefkal tzavarav oid. And he cried. And oid means he cried again. He didn't say one word. Vayera Elav, he appeared in front of him. Vayipal al tzavarav. Vayefkal tzavarav oid. Vayom Yisroel el Yosef. Now, Pasuk doesn't say that Yaakov cried, but Yaakov turns to Yosef and he tells him, Amusa hapam, now I'm going to be able to die a peaceful death. Achri ra'oisi es panecha, now that I've seen your face, ki oitcha chai, and I'm looking at you and I see that you're still alive. And we're going to stop here. So, Yosef, at the very, very, very end of today's shir, and Yisroel, they finally see each other. So, how did this embrace go? I mean, it's been 20 years in the making, 22 years in the making. Vayipal al tzavarav, Yosef falls on Yaakov's neck. Vayefkal tzavarav, which suggests he didn't just cry, but he cried and he cried. Didn't say one word. Yisroel, for his part, Yaakov Avinu, right? Doesn't say anything about crying. Vayomi Yisroel el Yosef, he talks. He says, Amusa hapam, achrei ra'oisi es panecha, ki oitcha chai. He says, I got my life back. Now already, I'm going to be able to die. So just to end with one thought, with one ha'ara. Everybody knows, Rashi brings the Chazal say, that the Pasuk says that when Yosef and Yaakov finally had this embrace, so Yosef cried, Vayefkal tzavarav oid, but doesn't say anything about Yaakov Avinu crying. So the question is, why was Yaakov not crying? Why did he fall on him? Doesn't even say he kissed him, Rashi says. How come he didn't do that? Amru Chazal, Shayukairishma. The reason is because Yaakov Avinu was saying Kriyishma. And being that Yaakov Avinu was saying Kriyishma, you can't be mafsik in the middle of Kriyishma, so he couldn't cry, he couldn't kiss him, he couldn't even fall on him. He just stood there as Yosef fell on him, and Yosef cried on him. After he finished Krishma, he said, Amusa hapam achrei ra'oisi es panecha ki oitcha chai. And everybody in the world from the beginning of time has asked the same question. Now you're saying Krishma? Maman of Shach. If it was Man Kriyishma, then Yosef should have also been saying Kriyishma. And if it wasn't Man Kriyishma, you should have said Kriyishma Kivasikin. You should have said it earlier. What's going on over here? Why is it that at this moment, when they're about to have this incredible embrace, all of a sudden, Yaakov Avinu is saying Kriyishma, and oh, by the way, Yosef is not saying Kriyishma, to the point that the moment is almost a little bit anticlimactic. You don't have the Vayipal al Tzavara, Vayef al Tzavara Void from the standpoint of Yaakov Avinu towards Yosef. So it's Yadua, the Welt says of art, that Yaakov Avinu was so overwhelmed with emotion at this point. Amusa hapam, vatachi ruach Yaakov. He was so overwhelmed that he felt that in that moment he wanted to take the feeling, the passion that he had, and he wanted to give it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he said, instead of me internalizing and living in that moment right now, this is a moment that I want to be makriv to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to give this up to Hashem. And he said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It was his way of channeling this incredible moment, the greatest moment of his life, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I want to share with you a new nusach that I saw in the Sefer Emunas Itecha from Hagoyin, the Mashkiach, Ramosha Wolfson, Zechet Tzaddik, V'Kadosh L'Vracha. It's right in the beginning of Parshas Vayigash. Again, it's this vart, Benusach Achak Tzas. And I think it's Kedai. And just to be makdem, we've spoken so many times over the years about the Gemara Masechtas Brachos Daf Samach Aleph Amud Beis. The Gemara says that the Romans had decreed that it was forbidden to teach Torah b'Rabbim. Rabbi Akiva, despite the fact that he knew what he was doing was a suicide mission, he went and he taught Torah b'Rabbim to the point that he was caught. They put him on death row. Says the Gemara, B'shasha Itzius Rabbi Akiva Lariga, when it came time to kill Rabbi Akiva, Zman Kriya Shema Haya. It was the time to read Kriya Shema. Vayisarkin es Besari b'Masr Shel Barzil. And the Romans were torturing him to death. That was the punishment that he was supposed to get. Vayimekabel all of Malchus Shemayim. But because it was the Zman Kriya Shema, so Rabbi Akiva was saying Kriya Shema, and he was being Mekabel al Malchus Shemayim. Amar le Talmidav, so the Talmid of Rabbi Akiva said, Rebbe, Ad Kan? Amar Lahem. So he told him, Kol Yomai Hayisi Mitztayr al Pasuk Zeh. He said, my whole life I was Mitztayr on this Pasuk. We say, Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha B'chol Levavcha U'v'chol Nafshecha U'v'chol Miyodecha. And B'chol Nafshecha means Afilu Noiteles Nishmascha, that you have to love Hashem even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away your nefesh. Amarti, I used to say, Masa Yovai Liyodi V'akaimenu. When am I ever going to have the opportunity to be Mekayim this Pasuk of Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha B'chol Nafshecha? No, now that I have an opportunity to be Mekayim this pasuk, lo yakaimenu, should I not be Mekayim it? Rabbi Akiva was being mayrich by the word echad, until his neshama left his holy guf by the word echad. Yatzas Abaskal v'amra, and Abaskal came out and said, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, sheyatza neshmasa be'echad. Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, how praised are you, Rabbi Akiva, that you was zoicha, that your neshama left your guf when you uttered the word echad. Amru Malachi Asharis l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Malachi Asharis turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they said, Zu Torah v'zu schara. The great Rabbi Akiva, this is the way he's going to end his life. How is it even possible? Yatzis Abaskal v'amra. Baskal came out and said, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva. It's true, in this world it didn't work out so well. You have no idea what's waiting for you in the next world. So Rabbi Akiva is on death row. He's being tortured by the Romans. But it was Man Kriya Shema. And he started saying Kriya Shema. And when the Talmidim saw Rabbi Akiva saying Kriya Shema, they said, Rabbeinu, Ad Kan? Ad Kan? Amar Lehem, so he told them, Kol Yomai Hayisi Mitztayr al Pasuk Zeh B'chol Nafshecha Afilu Noiteles Nishmascha. I was waiting for the opportunity to do it. Now that I have the opportunity, should I not do it? And all the Mefarshim struggle. What did the Talmidim mean when they said Rabbeinu Ad Kan? What does that mean? Ad Kan? It's a funny lashon. Ad Kan? And Rabbi Akiva's response, my whole life I've been mitztayer. When am I going to have the opportunity to be mekayim this pasuk? So we once mentioned from the great Reb Shlomo Zalman Bivolozhin. So Reb Chaim Volozhin had a brother, Reb Shlomo Zalman Bivolozhin, that in yeshiva lore was even greater than the great Reb Chaim Volozhin. And he was known very fondly in the Olam HaYeshivas as Reb Zalman Bivolozhin, one of the Talmidei Muvhakim of the Vilna Gaon. And Reb Zalman Bivolozhin, he was once asked this question. He said, what did the Talmidim mean when they said Ad Kan? And what was Rabbi Akiva's response? Kol Yomai Hayisim Mitztayr al Pasuk Zeh. So Reb Zalman Bivolozhin said that the Talmidim saw Rabbi Akiva. He's on death row. He's being tortured. And he was saying Kriya Shema. And he was doing it so serenely. He was doing it so peacefully. He was doing it b'kavana, the way you're supposed to say the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. And they looked at him and they said, Ad Kan? I mean, Rebbe, we know you're not regular, but Ad Kan? How are you in this moment able to be so calm, so locked in, that you're able to say Kriya Shema in such a way? So he told them, you want to know why? He said, because the Svar Makdoshim saying, this is your dua from the Tshuvas HaRashba, and from the Rebbe Melech, and all the Chassidish Svarim, that when a Yid says Kriya Shema, and a Yid says, Ve'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha, what he's supposed to do is he's supposed to close his eyes, and he's supposed to picture, b'chol levavcha, that whatever Mesiras Nefesh is asked and called upon from me, I'm willing to give it up for Hashem. If I ever found myself in a situation like Jews have found themselves throughout the generations, where it's give me your religion or give me your life, I'll give up my life and I won't give up my religion. And it's b'chol moedecha, whether it's your money, whatever it might be. A Yid who says Kriya Shema properly, every single time he says Kriya Shema, twice a day, pamayim b'ahava, he's supposed to close his eyes and he's supposed to see himself being thrown into a fire. He's supposed to see himself with Romans being sarkin as Pesari b'masr k'shal barzel. That's the way you're supposed to say Kriya Shema. So said Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, you want to know why I'm able to do this? Because this is not the first time I've been here. I've been here every single day, twice a day. Kol yomai hoyisi mitztayer al pasuk zeh. My entire life, when I read the pasuk b'chol nafshecha, I was bitzar. I lived through this already. I saw myself in the fire. I saw myself with Romans being sarkin as besari ben Mr. Kaishal Barzel. There's no chiddush over here. I got practice. That's why I'm able to do it. I've been waiting for this. I've been practicing for this. The visualization for me was so real throughout my life that I've been here before. And that's why this is something I'm able to do, and I'm able to do it as easily as you're seeing me be able to do it. The Talmidim couldn't understand how in 1 second he was able to reach such a madrega. And what Rabbi Akiva told his Talmidim, my entire Talmidim, you're making a toys. This didn't happen in a second. This is a life of avodah. I've been here so many times before. Every single time I said Kriya Shema, when I came to B'chol Nafshecha, I pictured this scene. This is easy for me. I've been practicing for this my entire life. That's why I'm able to do what you see me doing. So Moshe Wolfson said that Yaakov Avinu, when he said Kriya Shema every single day, Pamayim Be'ahava, and when he came to the words B'chol Nafshecha, what was he thinking? Afilu noiteles nishmascha. Kol yomei hayisi mitztayer. If Rabbi Akiva said Kriya Shema like that, Yaakov Avinu certainly said Kriya Shema like that. And his Kriya Shema was the Kriya Shema of the Rashba and the Tshuva, the Kriya Shema of the Sfarim HaKadoshim, of the Tzadikim and the Chassidim and the Mekubalim. He was mitayer that I'm willing to give up my entire life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But listen to this. He said the last 22 years of my life, Yaakov Avinu says, what was my life worth? Wasn't worth anything. Yaakov Avinu was depressed. Yaakov Avinu was living a life that he said was going to go liyaga in sha'ila. It was be'evel. He was mourning. He didn't feel like his life had that much meaning. So I've been giving up a life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What kind of life have I been giving him? A life that to me doesn't even have so much meaning. It's a life that's not even worth living. It's a life that's almost meaningless. So he didn't feel like his Kriya Shema was a Kriya Shema b'shleimus. But now that Yaakov Avinu heard, Oy Yosef chai v'chu Moshel b'Eretz Mitzrayim, it was Vatechi Ruach Yaakov. And then when Yaakov came, and when Yaakov saw Yosef, what was his reaction? Amusa apam. Now I'm going to die because I got my life back. If I got my life back, now I can die. When Yaakov Avinu got his life back, you know what Yaakov Avinu said? Now I want to say Kriya Shema again. Because now for the first time in 22 years, I could say Kriya Shema. I could become to B'chol Nafshecha, and I could feel like I'm actually giving something of value to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That life that I gave the Eibush to the last 22 years, Vasfar Aleben das gewesen. He said, but now he felt that he has a life to give to the Eibishter. Now that he's Vatechi Ruach Yaakov, now that it's a Musa Apam, so Yaakov Avinu said, now I'm going to say Kriya Shema. And the emphasis was, Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Vada. Baruch Shem, K'vein Malchusay L'olam V'ad, that too. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha B'chol levavcha V'chol nafshecha. That was the punchline of the Kriya Shema of Yaakov Avinu. That's what he was driving at. That B'chol nafshecha had a whole nother meaning right now. And he said, I'm going to take this nefesh, this Vatechi Ruach Yaakov, and Eibishter, if you called upon me this second to give you this life that I just got back, with a long-term lease, if I was called upon giving this life to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what I would do. That was the Kriya Shema of Yaakov Avinu. Yosef HaTzadik saw Yaakov. He didn't say one word. He had covered his father. I'm not even going to talk in the presence of my father. Vayipal al tzavara vayevk al tzavara void. Yaakov Avinu's immediate reaction was, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol nafshecha. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol nafshecha. And then afterwards, he said, Yosef, Amusa hapam achri re'oisi es panecha ki oitcha chai. What's going to happen now? So again, we're stopping again with a little bit of a cliffhanger, but that will, Be'ezus Hashem, be the topic of the next year.